Hi, Carlo, and thank you for joining us on our Biotech Makers series. It's fantastic to have you here, and I'm really interested and intrigued to kind of dive into your journey from doing your PhD at university to having this spin out. So please introduce yourself, Carlo.
Yeah, hey, good morning from Norway. Thank you so much for having me as well. It's a pleasure being here. Yeah, I'm Carlo. I'm originally from Switzerland. I grew up in Zurich. It's also where I studied. I'm a mechanical engineer originally, studied at ETH. And by some funny coincidences, about 8 years ago, I had the chance to move to Norway, to Trondheim, a town I've never heard before, where I did my master thesis under a professor that came over from Stanford, and that kind of turned into a PhD. And together with a really good crew in Zurich, we developed something that we ended up patenting. And so about 2.5 years ago, we decided to spin this out as a company. And since then, I'm running Vitroscope as the CEO with amazing co-founders.
Oh, that's fantastic. So can you just give us like a little bit of a deeper dive into, an overview of the business and really how it came about?
The story kind of starts back in Zurich when I was still a student, where I had this amazing lecturer who then became professor at the University of Zurich. And what they were doing is that they're researching living cells under mechanical stress. So to better simulate the environment in the human body where all cells always experience this mechanical stimuli. And before I moved to Norway, he invited me over to his laboratory and is like, hey, look, we do this amazing research. Like, we have nature level publications. And at the same time, it's just so tedious to do this research, and we cannot share the equipment at all because it's all homemade and it's quite complex and takes a lot of time to use. And what we would really like to have is something much more compact and easy to use, so that, theoretically every laboratory in the world can do this kind of more accurate, more lifelike biology research. And so through my PhD, I had the chance to just focus on developing this product. I did my PhD in a product development laboratory called Troll Labs at NTNU Trondheim. You should check it out. And we developed the system with the sole focus in mind to make a very complex type, or a rather complex type of research, very accessible, very efficient, and very easy to do. And the motivation behind it is that the more accurately you can research on living cells, the better you can predict in a laboratory, for example, how a drug will work in a human being, of course.
That's amazing. And you've shared with us like your motivator as to how this all came about. I'm really interested to know, what was the motivation for you to wanting to start a business? What kind of sold it to you and thought, yes, do you know what, I'm going to jump in at the deep end and I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a business from scratch, because it's a big thing. It's a big deal, and it takes a lot of effort.
When you do a PhD, you are somewhat intrigued by creating something new, right? You want to push the boundary of what is known. That's why you write your publications. That's why I spend all these days in the laboratory, or weeks and nights and months. You go through a lot of effort just to push the boundary of something that exists. And I think when you start a company, it's a bit similar, right? Like you create something that does not exist yet, that people are potentially willing to pay for. And so it has somewhat of a similarity, I think. This curiosity, this drive to create something new, this motivation to challenge yourself, to push the boundaries of something.
Did you see opportunities in the space where you thought there's customers for this, and did you do like kind of market research prior to, or did you just throw in and just go for it?
We literally started at folded paper prototypes. It's not even a joke. Like, the first prototypes were literally folded paper. And we got pretty far, to the point where we're like, okay, so now this is the stage where, they can use it internally in Zurich, but we don't dare yet to go outside. It's still a bit too much duct tape on this prototype to approach other laboratories. And so I applied for some research grants, and that financed what we call the beta program. And so we managed to secure this funding, and we made 10 prototypes that had a much higher robustness level than the first version. And we managed to find 6 laboratories in private and public settings around the world. So from Canada, USA, Finland, Switzerland, Norway. And we found these laboratories and they were interested in actually using this system for various reasons. So some had already used such mechanical stress experiments before, and others just wanted to get into this field, and they wanted to or they checked the market and they just saw that all the solutions that are out there, because there is a market, there's of course competitors out there, but they said they checked all the competitors and everything is just so complex to use and lots of equipment and tedious that they chose our prototype or our beta version over what's on the market. And so that was in a way our validation of a lot of our assumptions, that if you make a new interesting research approach very accessible by making it easy, then all of a sudden your market is not limited to those laboratories that already do this kind of research, but you actually open up all biology research laboratories. And so that was probably part of our market research, where we're like, okay, if I'm able to just call up a bunch of laboratories in around the world and say, hey, do you want to try this thing? And they say, yeah, I've never tried this, but I'll do it. And they get going. And we actually just got first data as well from some of our most active users. And so within a very short period of time, they were able to go from never done this before to actually publishable data. And so it's like, yeah, that validates a lot of our hypotheses about how this market works and where we want to go.
And having your hypothesis kind of validated and having all that data must have been really reassuring for you that, yeah, this is definitely working, this is going ahead. I'm really intrigued to know that when you was kind of making that transition from PhD to having this prototype to pushing this out, what was your first steps? What was your first step when you thought, yeah, we're starting a business now, this is the first thing that I need to do?
The first step is really try to get a team together, try to somehow figure out what needs to be done now in order to just get to the next steps. And obviously there was a lot of mistakes in that, like a lot of decisions I regret or I would do totally different today. I think it's just, when you do something for the first time, it's inevitable that you do mistakes. The question is just, can you learn from them very, very rapidly? Can you get over them? And can you avoid them the next time? I think that's what's most important. It's a struggle, it's a lot of hard work, and you will make mistakes. That's just how it is. And so my first steps were quite confused, chaotic, but at the same time just trying where do we need to go, what works, what doesn't work, and then as soon as you find the little notch or the path that works, then you continue that one.
Yeah, I imagine it's such a huge learning curve to kind of go on this kind of journey, and also along the way, like you say, not being scared or having a fear of failure, because you are going to get hiccups along the way, and it's about overcoming those. Which leads me on to the point of when you were kind of setting this up, what support did you have around you? What was your support system like, and how did that help you to thrive?
I think the biggest support I had was the laboratory where I did my PhD. So there's no doubt they would not have happened without that professor, without the support of that lab. Other than that, the problem is a bit when you take something out of a university, there's so much administration around it. So who owns the patent rights? Who pays for the patenting? Who pays for nationalization? Who can go with this? How much do you pay for the license fee, et cetera, et cetera? And in our case, it was extra difficult because we patented together with Zurich. And so the two universities had to agree on something, and then we had to make a deal with Zurich. And then because we're in Norway and not in Switzerland, you get no support from Switzerland. And because the patent is kind of owned by Zurich, you don't get any support from Norway. So we just fell in between all the cracks. And so in that sense, we actually got quite little support, actually almost no support from a university side. And we just really had to push hard for getting in some soft funding and some small angel investors so that we can finance the nationalization of the patent and just finance the next development steps. And for that, I must say the support was amazing through the kind of public institutions here. So both the Research Council of Norway and Innovation Norway were of tremendous help with financing this and still are.
Oh, that's great that you managed to get the support. And as you've said, like getting the support sounds like a challenge in itself. What other challenges did you face, or do you think were the biggest challenges when starting up?
For us to get laboratory access where we did our PhD, to get back in that lab and actually do some prototyping there, we would pay the same rate like a multi-billion-dollar corporation per hour. So there's just these hurdles where you need to really build stuff on your own, and you have no support from where it all started and where you actually try to make an impact or show that, you know, we can take science to the market. So that was a massive hurdle. At the same time, well, it's no secret, COVID has an effect on every company that is somewhat hardware based. I mean, it's one thing that the car makers are struggling to find their chips, but the same goes for us, right? So we struggled very hard. We had actually the whole design for our electronics ready to be produced, and then it was just overnight all the components were gone and we had to redesign everything. And so that was a massive struggle for sure. Other than that, I mean, of course, we had suppliers that had to close down because they had actually COVID outbreaks in their manufacturing and so on. But I think, you know, building a startup, it's very hard to say what is the biggest hurdle. What is the biggest hurdle? I mean, you always have the next biggest hurdle right in front of you. I think that's just the name of the game. I think, sure, I can complain about, you know, lack of support here or lack of support there, but at the end of the day, that's what you sign up for. And like, if we had that support, then the big struggle would be elsewhere. And so it's difficult, it's hard, but it's just one big struggle anyways. And you just have to, again, like take small steps, climb the mountain that you can climb, and then look forward to the next mountain that you have to climb next. And I think it's maybe the focus shouldn't be on like what was the biggest hurdles and the biggest struggles. Maybe the question is more like what was the biggest key to success. And I think for that, it's clear answers like the team, the people around you. That's what supports you. That's the people you can lean on when something goes wrong. That's the people you can trust. They can take over a task and actually, you know, get one of those hurdles out of the way. And so, yeah, it's just in my opinion, it's you always have huge struggles. So just focus on how do you get over struggles. That's much more important.
I want to throw something a bit different at you now. Imagine you could go in a time machine and you could go all the way back and start this whole process and this whole journey again. What would you do differently? Or if you wouldn't do differently, what would you actually do the same? Is there anything, you know, particular that stands out to you that you think, yeah, I should have done this instead, or actually this worked really, really well, I would do this all over again?
Of course, guaranteed I would do a lot of things very differently. As I said before, like when you do something for the very first time, when you do something very challenging the first time, it's inevitable that you do mistakes. The question is, how fast do you learn from them? I've learned a lot of mistakes. There's many things I would do differently. The shift from being a PhD, where, you know, research never ends. You're always developing a bit further, new add-on, you get a new variable into your research, you establish a new truth, you build onto it, etc., etc. However, if you start a company, or when you start a company, it's all about, you got to sell something, and it just has to be good enough so that people are willing to pay for it, and that only then you can take it to the next level. And so that shift from mindset, from like constantly improving, otherwise it's not good enough, to no, make something robust enough at one level, and then get it out on the market, and only then go up one step. I think that is the biggest shift in mindset that I learned, and that I would do completely different if I had, you know, the same 2.5 year journey again.
It's fantastic to hear where you've got to after these 2.5 years. You know, you've accomplished so much. You've still got obviously a big journey ahead. Yeah. What's next in your journey? What's next for Vitroscope?
There's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So one, we're actually starting to ship our products now. Plan is in September, unless there's some big hiccup again, but that is now our schedule. So we have a bunch of pre-orders, and we're super excited to fulfill those. We have first data coming in, as I mentioned, so we're really looking forward to the first publications that are, you know, publishing data generated on our systems, which is super exciting for us. On the company side, we're always in the chase for money, so we're really looking forward to an autumn of hopefully some exciting news regarding our funding rounds, so that we can really accelerate this growth. What we're working towards is we really want to help all these researchers that, you know, are spending so much energy and so much effort into making our understanding of the human body much better. We really want to give them the tools to push their own skills to the absolute boundaries as well. Because we, as I said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't always understand what people are telling me about their research. But what I do understand is that we have the systems to make a difference so that they can really, really, really fulfill their research vision as well, and really have impactful data. And I think that I'm super excited about, to see how far can we push the boundaries of what is currently possible in the laboratory to, you know, how far up can we bring this in over the next years. That I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I love the sound of pushing boundaries. That sounds like really exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing where your journey goes. It's so nice to have someone like yourself giving back. So thank you so much for taking your time to share your story with us, Carlo. Really, really appreciate it.